Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Nugget Bridge International Friendly. My name is Evan Pladlat, joined by my good friend, as most times, Scott Glaza. Had a great day of battles so far. Scott's been on the mic, but before we get into these games, just real quick, let's give a nice Twitch chat round of applause for Justin Flynn and Dwee Ha covering those first few games. They'll be with Scott and myself in Indianapolis, and I think they did a pretty great job myself. How about you, Scott?
Yeah, I was really pleased. Always enjoy hearing them cast. They've gotten really good really quickly, so fun team to be on this year. Hopefully you guys enjoyed them, and Evan and I will try not to bore you too much. Hopefully the drop down won't be too steep.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that works out. But I don't think that anything could be boring given the state of the game right now. This international friendly has exceeded all of my expectations. We've had now 8 great matches so far. United States up 2-1, but of course it's still anyone's game with so many strong trainers left to come.
Yeah, we've had a few of these friendlies where I've had to try really hard to pretend I'm excited, but not actually been excited at all. But this has been fantastic. Some really awesome matches so far. And I think the next one might be one of the most interesting with Blake Hopper versus Lajos. How am I going to say this one, Evan?
Lajos, I believe.
Lajos? Okay, we're going with
close.
that. So, yeah, Lajos. We've got Blake, who's a very offensive player. He's known for using a lot of setup-oriented Pokemon, being very aggressive, versus Lajos, who's known for being very defensive. He's had a lot of really interesting, well-synergized defensive cores. He built the famous Team Hero Ninetales last year, and I think is possibly the only trainer in the history of doubles to ever make a competent Ninetales team. This team is a little different. He had a big team built around Trevenant, but I see we've got something a little new here.
Yeah, still not going too far away from his defensive roots with that Amoonguss first Pokemon shown. You got that Amoonguss, you got Gyarados, Chandelure, Salamence, Tyranitar, and Manectric making his first appearance, or I guess her first appearance in the tournament so far. And of course, off-screen, Blake is running Politoed, Aerodactyl, Ludicolo, Mawile, Hydreigon, and Gardevoir. So a few new faces coming from Lajos, and a few old ones that we've seen throughout the tournament from Blake here.
Yeah, I think Lajos' team is really awkward to try to fight against in team preview. There's a lot of question marks. So you assume Manectric has the Manectricite, but Tyranitar could also be a Mega. Gyarados could also be a Mega. Both of them synergize very well with Amoonguss, who tends to play really well with the Dragon Dancing Megas. So the first game is going to be really important for Blake here, trying to get enough information to know how to play against this team. And as far as Blake's team goes, he also has a handful of complicated Pokemon to play against. He's got the Rain mode, which is always irritating to play against, and then we've seen the power of Aerodactyl and Gardevoir in some of the previous matches. Hydreigon again, and Mawile is also going to be an interesting one here, just because there's a lot of Pokemon on Lajos' team that are difficult to, or I guess, are effective against Mawile, so it'll be difficult to play, like Chandelure especially, but also the Intimidate. A few Pokemon that are quick-riveted. Amoonguss, a big problem for it, so it'll be tough for Mawile to go crazy the way it has in a few previous matches.
Yeah, definitely going to be tough for that Mawile to go off this game. And right from the start, we're getting that Amoonguss and the Manectric out on the field for Lajos, and Politoed Gardevoir for Blake. Blake obviously taking the fake-out pressure for first turn, and the Trace getting that Regenerator. That's going to be huge for Gardevoir.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess he'd probably rather have had the Lightning Rod, big 50-50 there. He didn't quite get the best side of it, but Regenerator's not a bad consolation prize. I think we're seeing also the strength of Rain this year here. With Kingdra on most of the Rain teams last year, you really needed to run the Rain mode to be able to play Kingdra. It was pretty terrible outside of Rain, but Ludicolo does not have this problem. It is excellent both in and outside of Rain this year. The special defense is just high enough that it does really well against a lot of Pokemon. It's immune to Spore now. It's immune to Rage Powder. Both of which could be relevant very quickly in this match. So a good early start for Blake here with 2 Pokemon with high natural special defenses against 2 special attackers.
Yeah, definitely a good position for Blake right now. You're right that grass typing on Ludicolo is going to effectively shut down that Amoonguss, except if he decides to target the Gardevoir. Manectric not going to have any of Ludicolo's business. Goes for the double protect. Lajos just wants to kill this turn here, remove the fake out pressure. while Gardevoir and Ludicolo just, have this wasted dead turn.
Yeah, I guess smart way to play it. Yeah, we don't see the double protecting and a fake out at this level quite as often as, I guess you might expect to see in other tournaments. But it makes sense here. There's not a whole lot of threat here coming from Blake's end. It's not like he has power up punch at Ludicolo or something. So pretty easy just to kill the turn there without giving anything up. He doesn't get a whole lot of information. You would assume Gardevoir would have Psychic. You would assume Ludicolo would have Ice Beam. So doesn't really learn much, but he does kill the fake out. He has to be careful here, too, because, the temptation, if you do leave Amoonguss in, which may not be the best choice against Gardevoir to begin with, is that safety goggles is actually a pretty common item on it. So if you go for the Spore there's still a good chance of it failing. If it isn't safety goggles, it might be choice specs, in which case Amoonguss is just going to get smeared before it can even move. So wouldn't have been surprised to see Amoonguss switch out, but it's not.
Yeah, but Amoonguss definitely going to stick around to help protect that Manectric, because they're going to go ahead and Mega Evolve. Lajos deciding he needs a little bit more offensive pressure on the map. The Intimidate going to go ahead and drop the attack for both of those special attackers. And it looks like that was a Snarl coming out from Manectric. Going to go ahead and drop both of the special attack. Not just the Intimidate, but the Snarl too. Dropping special attack, making sure that Manectric is as annoying as possible. Amoonguss tanking that Ice Beam like a champ there, and the Will-O-Wisp from Gardevoir. Clearly, Blake also expected that Amoonguss to switch out. Here comes the Spore from the Amoonguss. Does land, so no safety goggles there. Gardevoir taking a little bit of a snooze early on, giving all the momentum over to Lajos.
Yeah, not safety goggles, and definitely not choice specs either, switching to the Bird. I guess that helps in the sense that at least the Burn will continue to do damage while the special attack is lowered by Snarl, but what a Lajos thing to do to run Snarl Manectric. We don't see this very frequently anymore, but it really seems like it fits his playstyle. It makes Manectric more of a disabling Pokemon with the combination of Intimidate and Snarl to lower both physical and special attack scores, and that's sort of the way he likes to play. He likes the long, grinding games. So I think it's a good fit for the way he likes to do things, and it's going to put Blake in a rough spot here. It looked like he had all the momentum just a turn ago, but by choosing not to Psychic there especially, he's really given it back to Lajos here. Yeah,
definitely not something that I would have expected to see out of that Manectric, but of course, as you mentioned, it works quite well for Lajos' style. Very interesting, though. There's not huge offensive pressure on Lajos' side here with just the Amoonguss and the Mega Manectric that's already shown Snarl. But with a sleeping Gardevoir and just one Ludicolo on the field, not a whole lot that Blake can counter with anyway. But Amoonguss does switch out, as we expected, into that Tyranitar. Would have been great if Blake had gotten that Will-O-Wisp on Tyranitar the first turn. Kicks up the Sandstorm. Going to go ahead and raise its stats a little bit. And Manectric also wants to get out of there. Volt switches, targets the Gardevoir, does some nice chip damage there. About half HP on that Gardevoir now, as Manectric goes back to his trainer. Volt Switch, one of those great moves that we don't see often enough, just because it allows you to maintain that momentum. And this is exactly why Volt Switch is a great move. Switches that Manectric out for the Amoonguss to tank that Hydro Pump from Ludicolo. Lajos really putting on a clinic this game.
Yeah, he might have been fishing for Tyranitar there, just guessed the wrong spot. Fairly obvious that Manectric would probably want to Volt Switch out there, but doesn't quite pay off for him. The Hydro Pump catches Amoonguss instead, and does basically nothing after that Snarl. Clever play by Lajos also to both switch and Volt Switch there to maneuver into a good position again. He's got Amoonguss out to protect Tyranitar from the threat of Will-O-Wisp. He gets Tyranitar out while Gardevoir is still sleeping, so a good chance of getting a free turn here. Ludicolo weakened, not going to do that much damage with any of its attacks to Amoonguss. Well, I'd like to see Tyranitar Mega Evolve here and start Dragon Dancing, and I'm not sure how Blake's going to be able to stop it.
Yeah, it looks like he's probably going to have to hope for a very early wake up from that Gardevoir just to have any hope of retaining any kind of the momentum this game. It's definitely putting Blake into a very tough spot here. With that Amoonguss and the Tyranitar out at the same time, very scary combination, because exactly what you've mentioned, Tyranitar can easily dance up, Dragon Dance up, become a sweeping threat, like we saw Mega Gyarados do earlier on in the tournament. Of course, Blake does want to get some of that momentum back on his side. Switches out Gardevoir for the Politoed. Kicks out the Sandstorm. Causes it to rain. The Drizzle is now boosting that Ludicolo's speed. And also going to boost the power of its Water-type attacks. will be very important to break through that Tyranitar, especially with the Snarl debuff. But Manectric switches in, gets the Intimidate off, again on 2 special attackers, and the Rock Slide comes in. Oh, but the Hydro Pump misses. Very, very unfortunate for Blake there. That would have been a game changer if he had managed to land that. Very rough stuff for Blake there.
Yeah, tough turn for him there. Just seems like a turn behind this game. Hydro Pump never seems to be working out for him. The Snarl really effective at controlling him, but at least he stopped Tyranitar from setting up.
Yeah, now we have the Amoonguss back out alongside the Manectric, just to sort of slow down the pace of the game. Seems to be where Lajos wants to have it.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like, at the very least for Blake, he's gotten a position where Lajos seems to have to be controlling the game with Manectric instead of with Tyranitar, which is the bigger threat here.
Yeah, speaking of that Manectric, he switches out for another big threat here, the Gyarados, back on the field, gets the Intimidate off. Should be pretty comfortable facing out against a Politoed and a Ludicolo, but of course that Politoed wants to switch out just in case he might need to get the Rain back on the field. Gardevoir comes right back out, traces the Regenerator again, doesn't quite get the Intimidate it might have wanted on that Gyarados, but the Hydro Pump dealing pretty much negligible damage to that Gyarados, while Amoonguss still is a little bit burnt.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Ludicolo's been on the field for the entire battle now, which in this case is probably not a good thing. Could probably use coming in and out once here. We do see Gardevoir getting back in fairly safely here, which is a nice thing, but kind of still interesting this game. We haven't seen a whole lot from either Gyarados or Tyranitar. Both of them have a decent chance of being Dragon Dancing Megas. Would like to see one of the 2 of them actually do it, but it's not happening in this game.
Well, I'm pretty sure by the time we see the Dragon Dance, that'll mean the game is already over. Tyranitar comes back out, going to go ahead and get the Sand back up to weaken the Water-type moves back again. The Waterfall does connect with the Gardevoir, while a Giga Drain does some damage to that Gyarados. And of course, the Sand damage now dealing chip damage to everyone on the field except for that Tyranitar. Now we have 2 huge offensive threats out on the field for Lajos, and of course those 2 more supportive Pokemon in the back.
Yeah, I'm still very curious about his items. I mean, we've seen Manectric as the Mega this game, so we know we won't see it this round from either Gyarados or Tyranitar, but you'd assume that one of the 2 of them would at least have it, right? So I'm curious which of them have Dragon Dance, if one of them has a more defensive set. I imagine Blake is too, right? I don't know if he completely understands what he's against yet, which makes it really difficult to play against. But you see Lajos winning the weather control game so far, at least.
Yeah, and there is the first Dragon Dance of the game. Gyarados going to go ahead and boost its stats. Good timing there. Gets to cancel out the Intimidate from Mawile on the switch in. Rock Slide coming out from the Tyranitar, dealing good damage to that Gardevoir, who does finally wake up and gets a Psychic off onto that Gyarados. Going to deal some important damage. Wow, so close. Doesn't quite faint from the Sandstorm, but you know, Gyarados just spent all that time boosting, and now it only has 1 turn left on the field.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if Lajos asks really nicely, Blake will bring Politoed back out and turn that sand off for him. But I guess, ironically, going to have some trouble here by winning the weather control game. Likely to see a Protect from Mile here to stall the set. What the?
Well, there you go, Gardevoir. I guess Blake Lajos asked nicely enough. Politoed comes back out for the Gardevoir, gets the Drizzle up. Probably going to just rely on Mawile's Sucker Punch to deal with the Gyarados in this situation, then I assume. Mawile, of course, going to go with the Mega Evolution. The Protect comes out from Tyranitar, going to go ahead and spin this turn waiting. And yeah, the Sucker Punch coming out from Mawile, going to go ahead and get the KO onto Gyarados and put the weather control and a little bit of the momentum back in Blake's favor, something that he hasn't had for a long time.
Yeah, jokes aside, that was actually the better play. I mean, he gets the knockout anyway. There's no way he could have attacked Tyranitar, and he gets the rain up. So actually pretty nicely done for him. He does have to worry about a quick rain or a sand reset on the other side. Lajos has the opportunity to switch Tyranitar out here and then immediately Volt Switch back to him if he wants the sand back up. But looks like Blake's switching too.
Yep, Politoed bouncing out. Does not want to stick around while there's a Manectric on the field. It's going to go ahead and switch back out for that Ludicolo, who finally makes its long-awaited return back to the field. And Tyranitar does back out and replaces, Lajos replaces that Tyranitar with that Amoonguss. And like you expected, the Volt Switch coming out from Manectric. Strong, critical hit, dealing great damage to that Mawile, correctly identifying that Blake wouldn't just let him have the free damage on that Politoed. Switches back out, gets Tyranitar right back out on the field, like you mentioned, sets the sand, and manages to get a little bit more of that control back. But right as Tyranitar comes back in, the play rough from Mawile. Oh, wow. Does not quite get the KO on Tyranitar, activates the weakness policy, and now we have a pretty dangerous Tyranitar out on the field.
Yeah, a lot of pretty interesting things there. Surprised to see the weakness policy on Tyranitar. It's pretty rare. Surprised to see it survive that play rough, especially with so little health. I'm curious if he trained his Tyranitar to survive that, or if that was just luck, but very interesting to see it's still alive with so little health. It's going to have a hard time actually attacking since Amoonguss can't Rage Powder that Ludicolo, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Blake try to get the rain set back up here. But big plays by both sides. Good prediction to Volt Switch the Mawile instead of the Ludicolo slot, getting some important damage in the Mega there, but also predicting the play I just mentioned with the Weather Reset with the Volt Switch. So both sides playing pretty well here, but for a control-based player with Lajos here, you really want to keep a lead in Pokemon, and he's behind now, which makes it tough to play his style.
Yeah, he's pretty far behind, actually, with a current score of 4-3, but that Tyranitar on its last breath goes ahead and protects, tries to stick around, but Blake gets the critical hit Ice Beam onto that Amoonguss, the double target coming up, going to try and get that Amoonguss off the field. Mawile does get the KO on Amoonguss and takes a little bit of damage from the Rocky Helmet. But now Lajos in a very difficult position after seeming like he was in control of this entire game.
Yeah, another really nice play by Blake. It's kind of been fun to watch this game, just seeing both sides trade some really excellent plays there. He predicts the Tyranitar Protect. Not too surprising there. He doesn't want to walk into a Sucker Punch and waste that weakness policy boost, but he loses Amoonguss for free at the expense of that, which I guess is kind of the issue of trying to play a team like Lajos is when you're behind, is you become predictable.
Yeah, definitely. And it looks like Blake really wants to just go ahead and get this 4-0, switches the Ludicolo back out for the Gardevoir, who traces Sandstream. Probably not what I was looking for there. The Mawile's Sucker Punch is going to target the Manectric instead. Volt Switch coming out onto Gardevoir, going to deal great damage there, while Tyranitar gets the Dragon Dance. Not a great position for Tyranitar, still going to be checked by that Sucker Punch, but a lot of free damage that Lajos just got on this turn.
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, a good play by both sides there. Mawile realizing that Tyranitar is not going to just let it Sucker Punch for the free KO, and he gets the Dragon Dance. So now it's pretty terrifying here at a boosted level of speed and 3 levels of attack. He does still have to worry about Politoed setting up Swift Swim for Ludicolo and negating all of that. So I cough up the wrong Pokemon at the wrong time. He's going to need to get Politoed out before Ludicolo fights again. I wouldn't be surprised to see Gardevoir go here, but Miles going to need to stick around to keep threatening that Sucker Punch.
Yeah, as you correctly identified, Mawile wants to stick around as long as possible. Goes for the Protect while Manectric gets the Snarl off. Good call there. Going to get the KO onto Gardevoir and would have potentially weakened one of the switch-ins. And Tyranitar, Lajos is identifying that Tyranitar is his only hope here, getting the second Dragon Dance off, now at 4 increased stages of attack and 2 of speed. Going to have to make sure that that Mawile doesn't get anything going, but if that Mawile is out of the picture and we can get, then that Tyranitar is going to be pretty scary. And out comes Politoed to set the rain back up.
Yeah, I'm concerned Blake might be able to take one attack too few here. He really needs to just find a way to keep Mawile alive while sacrificing Politoed here to get Ludicolo back out. And I think he needed one more turn than he's going to get, because Tyranitar, with 2 levels of speed now, is in danger of outrunning Ludicolo if it gets another Dragon Dance up. It may already be able to do so depending on the way both Pokemon were trained. Manectric threatening both Pokemon here. Tyranitar still probably doesn't want to attack, but since it has Protect up here, all it really needs is Maul to, or I guess Manectric to pick up a KO here, but daring switch.
Yeah, very daring. Mawile is going to go back to Blake, and out comes that Ludicolo. Hopefully, potentially trying to burn a Protect here, but Tyranitar does not care. Goes for the Rock Slide. Huge plays. Gets the double KO on Politoed and Ludicolo. And now it's just Mawile able to threaten that Tyranitar. And somehow, Lajos brings it back.
Yeah, unless this Ludicolo has Surf or something, this game is probably over. Pretty daring by Lajos there to be willing to risk the Rock Slide with Maul out, but I think he knew that he had Blake pinned. Blake was kind of in a position there where, like I mentioned, he needed one more turn than he had, so he had to try to maneuver his way around that play. But what he did was really risky there. I don't know if there was a way that would have worked out. So I don't know if I completely see what Blake was feeling there, but losing position, sometimes you have to make dangerous plays.
And Lajos does go ahead and sacrifices Tyranitar to that Mawile Sucker Punch. Manectric sure to get the final KO here. And Lajos takes an exciting match, really back and forth. It's going to take the W, the only thing that matters. And we're going to game 2.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about the game. It seemed like in the beginning, Lajos had a big advantage. Then it seemed like Blake had a big advantage, and Blake just couldn't close it that time. We kind of saw the power of Dragon Dance Tyranitar there when the way you're checking it is Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch is a great way to deal with Pokemon that don't have moves like Dragon Dance, but when you're just giving up 2 dances for free like that to something that already has a weakness policy boost, you're really, really playing with fire, and Blake just wasn't able to quite finish it off there. I'm sure he's really wondering how that game would have gone if Playrough had finished Tyranitar off there, but it's not what happened. So he's going to have to adjust for the second game here. I think that both sides probably can feel both good and bad about the ways they played that game. I think they both could easily have won that game, and they both could easily have lost it. So I guess just a mark of a game played between 2 really good players. But if I'm these guys, I'm probably going to try to slow things down a little bit here. Try to maintain control over a longer, over the whole match. I feel like if you're Blake, you liked the way that game played out, even though you lost it a little more than Lajos. I mean, I'm sure he feels amazing about coming back there. That was fantastic. But you'd think the more control-oriented player would prefer the slower match without the shootout that game was. So I'd really try to put the clamps in here if I'm Lajos.
Yeah, definitely. And just to refresh everyone's memory, you're looking at Lajos' team here. That's the Amoonguss, the Gyarados, the Chandelure, the Salamence, the Tyranitar, and the Manectric. Just to remind everyone, Blake is running a Politoed, Aerodactyl, Ludicolo, Mawile, Hydreigon, and Gardevoir himself. I'm really interested in seeing how this plays out. Blake's been having an amazing season, but he's going to need to be able to prove himself in these high-pressure situations. He's 2 games away from taking the win home for America, for the United States. But Lajos is putting on an amazing show here, trying to stop him from being able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned being able to, win the big games here, because I think that both players are kind of people who'd really like to prove they can do that. Blake had some pretty interesting online tournament results prior to this year, but he hadn't really got it done in person. And Lajos is one of the more popular players in Germany, but similarly hasn't really had, he's been close, I guess. He's getting the world's invites, but he hasn't had those big finishes to get the trips that go along with them. I think they're both players who, they're very strong players, but they're still trying to get that respect from the huge finishes, right? And this is probably a big opportunity for both of them, especially with the spotlight of, the fate of the show match in their hands.
Definitely. And we see that Lajos feels perfectly fine with how the first opening salvo of the game went. Goes with that Amoonguss and the Manectric once again, while Blake is going to switch it up a little bit, brings out the Gardevoir and now the Hydreigon back out on the field. Union Strike making his second appearance on the stream tonight.
Yeah, we'll try to
yeah. Going for more immediate offensive pressure right from the start.
Yeah, we'll try to think too hard about how that happened, but I would say normally when I'd see this, you'd think that the advantage would be on Blake's end, but now that we know Manectric has Snarl, a complicated position, right?
Yeah, and Manectric is going to go ahead and react to that Mega Ring right off the bat. Mega evolves into Mega Manectric, gets the Intimidate off again, going ahead and drop those attacks. Of course, as we mentioned before, both special attackers. With no Ludicolo on the field, Amoonguss feels free to go ahead and Rage Powder at will, and the Snarl comes out, like we predicted, from the Manectric, dropping the special attack of both of Blake's Pokemon. Like you mentioned, Lajos is trying to slow it down, and he's starting to slow it down right from the start. That Dragon Pulse not doing a lot of damage to the Amoonguss, but a good call from Blake, doubling up with the Psychic, dealing good damage now. About a third HP left on that Amoonguss.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a bunch of damage out of this, but yeah, Amoonguss will regenerate that back to about 50% once it switches out here. Manectric, since it's the fastest, can Snarl again, and he still has control of the field here. I'd like that first turn if I was Lajos.
Yeah, and Amoonguss does switch out for the Tyranitar back out on the field. Slows it down, weakens the opposing threats, but now puts his Tyranitar back on the field. We already know is more than capable of putting this game on his back and taking over here. Now both of Blake's Pokemon dropping 2 stages of special attack, and with the boost from Sand on Tyranitar, that is going to be a bulky Pokemon.
Yeah, it definitely is. Rough spot here for Blake. He's still got to worry a bit about the... He's got the threat of Will-O-Wisp, I guess, to worry Tyranitar here a little bit. But with 2 special attackers here, with 2 levels of lowered special attack, he's really not threatening very much damage here. It's likely that Manectric will get out of here since it's done its job, but a tough spot now for Blake.
Yep, and Manectric does leave the field in favor of that Amoonguss back out on the field. Now at about 60% health, like you predicted. Just going to go ahead and try and waste this turn, but Blake is not going to take the bait. Goes ahead and targets that Amoonguss on the switch, and but the Will-O-Wisp does hit the Protect. Blake not quite predicting that switch in and the Protect there.
Yeah, I wish he'd committed a little harder one way or the other, right? I don't think that's a winning play in any situation. Either Amoonguss is coming in, you need to double target it, or just Will-O-Wisp the Tyranitar and get the -2 Hydreigon out of there. He does have Amoonguss low enough that he can probably finish it off with Hydreigon now and get the Will-O-Wisp off, but I think it's actually going to be pretty close here. I'm not sure if I would want to risk this calc. He also kind of has the awkward situation is that normally if you have Gardevoir against Tyranitar, you can get the burn off and then start using the Fairy-type moves, but since he already knows the weakness policies there, he really doesn't want to actually attack Tyranitar with Gardevoir. He's going to negate the potential of that burn.
Yeah, not a great position to be in if you're Blake. And again, this is feeling like a repeat of last game with Lajos in control from the start. Blake managed to make a pretty good comeback in the mid-game, but then lost it right at the very end there. Mawile is going to come out to use that Intimidate to try and weaken that Tyranitar and to refresh a special attack on that Hydreigon. Good call there, just to try to get some momentum back on the field, but Tyranitar doesn't want to stick around to begin with because he knows that Will-O-Wisp might be coming in. Chandelure shows up for this game while Amoonguss protects, hoping to get that Flash Fire boost. Yeah! Wow, Blake really telegraphing that Will-O-Wisp there and giving Chandelure a free boost to all of its Fire-type attacks.
Yeah, this is kind of the power of playing a defensive play style, is that once you get ahead, you really limit your opponent's moves. And that makes it, it sets up the potential of making plays like that. Logic really controlling this game well, and it's going to forcing Blake to keep walking into traps like this because he just doesn't have a lot of viable plays. Really tough position now for Blake again, because you still have this weakened Gardevoir out there who can't do basically anything to Chandelure. You've got Mawile who can't do anything if it has Substitute, which is pretty common here. Really in any situation other than a choice Chandelure, this is a really, really bad situation for Blake. And even if it is choiced, he can't Sucker Punch safely because of Amoonguss. So just a whole host of problems here for Blake. It's hard to imagine a worse situation. He's really going to have to think of something fast here because it'll only take about another turn or two of Lajos continuing to apply the clamps here, and the game's going to get away from him.
Yeah, like you mentioned, when you're playing this defensive style, you never want to go down, but as soon as you take the lead, you can really, like you said, put the clamps to them, make it so that it's very difficult for them to get back in the game. Amoonguss, though, does decide to switch out for the Manectric again. Gets the Intimidate off on Mawile, weakening it a little bit. And the Substitute does come out from that Chandelure like you predicted. Nice little Pokédoll there. And the Psychic from Gardevoir going to target the Manectric, hoping against hope to be able to KO that Amoonguss. But it's just not in the cards for Blake right now. Manectric even surviving through the sandstorm damage too. Very, very dominant position for Lajos here now.
Yeah, the other thing too is, you normally think, well, at least Sandstorm's going to finish off the Manectric, but it's got to be really close to expiring, and even if it is, there's always the option of Volt switching out. There isn't really a safe play from Blake's side here. He doesn't want to take a Heat Wave or an Overheat on Mawile. He doesn't want to take a Shadow Ball on Gardevoir. He can switch Hydreigon in pretty safely, but it's not going to get very much done here either. And I think he's really going to have to preserve that to have a decent chance of winning this game. So exposing this could be dangerous also. It's things are really going downhill for Team USA in this round.
Yeah, I mean, even if he does get the resisted Heat Wave on this Hydreigon that switches back in, that Flash Fire boost, the Flash Fire boost is still going to deal significant damage to any Pokemon that it hits. Mawile does go ahead and Mega Evolves into that Mega Mawile, and the Sucker Punch onto Manectric, not going to let Manectric get any free damage off this turn, but it does leave Mawile wide open to the Heat Wave from Chandelure. Hits both targets, no misses here. That Flash Fire boosted Heat Wave, like so much damage, gets the KO on Mawile easy, and deals a critical hit to Union Strike, the Hydreigon. Really, really strong play there. That Chandelure hidden behind that substitute, not going to be able to break out of that easily. And this looks like a win for Team Germany.
Certainly looks that way. I mean, the critical hit there adds the damage, but at the end of the day, I don't really know how relevant it is. And Mungus healing up even more. It's just, wow, really dominating performance by Lajos here. Chandelure getting a bunch of free damage off there. I don't know if Blake was playing expecting a Shadow Ball or just kind of playing hoping for one, knowing that he was losing and kind of had to hope that Lajos fed him something that he had a win condition off of. But definitely not what he was hoping for there. He gives up his Mega for basically nothing. I mean, he gets it down to 3-3, but the health he took to do that is definitely not worth it.
Yeah, Ludicolo coming back out. Not too many other options for Blake there. Hydreigon is going to switch out. The Trace coming out does trace the Flash Fire. Really clutch move by Gardevoir there. Not going to be able to be hurt by that Heat Wave. Gives Blake a little bit more time to think about ways to get back in the game. Lajos, again, when faced with the fake-out threat from Ludicolo, goes for the double protect, playing very safely, making sure that he doesn't give up any piece of his lead this time.
Yeah, but now this makes the situation a lot more interesting. He burned the double protect to try to scout Blake out here, which might be a play that let Blake get back in the game. The temptation now is going to be to Shadow Ball Gardevoir, which is pretty dangerous because since Amoonguss can't Rage Powder Ludicolo, a Hydro Pump will break that substitute if he doesn't substitute again, and then he'll be exposed for future turns here. And Heat Waving would not do anything to Gardevoir, so it can make a play. So interesting spot now. Blake at least clawing back in a little bit.
Yeah, we saw it happen last time. Both of these players doing whatever it took to claw their way back into the game. And an ally switch from Gardevoir. Going to go ahead and switch positions with Ludicolo. The Hydro Pump does go off this time, breaks the substitute, and we'll have to see if Blake's ally switch gambit there works out. Not so much when you're going up against a Heat Wave. Probably trying to predict a Spore or something onto that Gardevoir there. Deals good damage to Ludicolo, but like you mentioned, that substitute is now broken, and Chandelure is available to be targeted.
I guess I'll assume Gardevoir doesn't have Protect there, so by ally switching, it both would have stepped Spore and then caused a lot less damage from something like Shadow Ball. I'm going to guess by how little damage the Flash Fire boosted Heat Wave did there that Ludicolo likely holding Assault Vest, so Shadow Ball wouldn't have been too troubling had that hit it, but still an awkward spot now.
Yeah, both of these heavy hitters on Lajos' side too. Tyranitar does get the Rock Slide off onto the Ludicolo and the flinch. So Ludicolo not going to be able to deal any damage to that Chandelure this time. The Shadow Ball is going to be a KO on Gardevoir. And that flinch really saving Lajos there from losing some of his offensive pressure.
Yeah, Rock Slide's been quite the move today. That one's stopping a Hydro Pump that might have knocked out Chandelure there, though Chandelure's special defense is pretty high. I I'm not sure that would have gotten the KO anyway, but certainly a bunch of important damage there. And by Chandelure surviving there, it stops the threat of the Will-O-Wisp onto Tyranitar, and it looks like Tyranitar should be able to clean this one up pretty easily now.
Yeah, it looks like Lajos could take this one in probably about 3 turns without doing much of anything, just off of sand damage. Right now, Blake's Pokemon are way too low to stand up to this offensive threat. Really well-played game by Lajos here. Only made that one error, and Blake stepped up, tried to make the most he could out of it. Really unfortunate that it went this way for Blake. But great game by Lajos here. And looks like Lajos is going to play it slow, play it steady. The double protect, going to let the sand damage KO Ludicolo, so that he doesn't have to worry about any errant critical hits that could change the course of the game. Draco Meteor into the protect, and Ludicolo does go down to that sand damage.
Yeah, I mean, Lajos doesn't have to do much now. Just slowly grinding it away. No point in taking unnecessary risks. Hydreigon doesn't have the ability to hit 2 targets here, so all Lajos has to do is click the attack button twice, and this one's all over.
I don't know. We've seen Lajos is a little bit shy to hit the attack button. You never know what's going to happen.
Well,
for example, Chandelure.
For sure.
Chandelure is switching out for the Among, trying to pad his stats here. The Draco Meteor misses anyway, and Brick Break coming out from Tyranitar. Going to be the final hit onto that Hydreigon. Gets the KO. Super effective attack. And Lajos brings it back for Germany. And guess what, Scott? We're tied.
Yeah, well, what better way to go into the 5th game, right? Great match there, though. I mean, Lajos really controlled the second game there. The first one was it went both ways, but Lajos totally dominating the second game. And also getting it done for his fantasy owners there by getting the 3-0 victory secured. But a really impressive series by him, I thought. Like I said, the first game seemed like it favored Blake a little bit more, even though he ended up not being able to close there with how fast and loose they're playing. Really aggressive game. Both sides taking a lot of risks. Whereas the second game was much more Lajos' style, and he showed why that's his style. Really dominant victory with the way he played that second game. He had control the whole way. Was never really in danger of losing. But an exciting series once again. We've had 4 really fantastic series so far, and it should be exciting to see the series decided with it tied 2-2 by the reigning U.S. national champion against the reigning German national champion.
Yeah, you could not have scripted a better end to this tournament. Also, Marcus, the reigning German national champion, his team captain, putting it all on his back, trying to carry Germany across the finish line. We'll see if Gavin can do the same for America, but it's going to be an interesting match, as all of these have been. Just want to touch on real quickly how impressive both of these young players have been. They're both having pretty breakout seasons this year, and they both played very well. Lajos, of course, taking the series, but Blake showed that if you give him an inch, he'll take all that he can from it, while Lajos showing that he very rarely gives you that inch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Blake could very easily have taken that first game, and we could be looking at a very interesting 3rd game right now that could have gone either way. But Lajos is just clutch enough to finish off that first game, and when we got the game that he played his style, he shows you just how hard it is to get that inch from him. Really, really strong defensive game there. There's a whole lot of players, I guess, who used to play more defensively who have moved on to more aggressive styles this year. But Lajos has been stubborn, right? He's still playing as defensively as ever, and it paid off for him there. Really excellent game by him, and showing that it can still be done this way.
Yeah, very strong performance from both of these players. Of course, we cannot wait for this next game. We'll be back in just a moment. We're going to go ahead and get that game set up for all of y'all. Again, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope you've been enjoying these games as much as I have. We'll be right back with the final game, the series decider of this international friendly in the United States of America and Germany, with Marcus versus Gavin, coming up right after this.